Tombs of AMASCUT drop rates are here. Well, sort of. The rate has been out for a few weeks now, and while nothing is official, we have some good data that has been harvested from Moonlight and from various surveys. These numbers have been estimated from a sample of data from both some PVM clans and a Reddit survey, and while it's small, it's got over 300 purples and over 13 to 15,000 raids, which should give us a nice estimate. If you want more information, stick around to the end of the video, but for now, let's get going. By the way, this is what my gear looks like right now. Bit of a mess, but I've been loving the raids. Be sure to subscribe for more information. So this is the total purple chance based on a huge variety of information. And the first thing you'll notice is that these are the raid levels here on the left. So at 150 raid level, this is a normal normal mode, standard TOA. You're going to get purples at about a 1 in 51 chance. And this goes up pretty quickly throughout the raid levels, 38, 1 in 26, all the way up to like a 1 in 5 at around the 500 raid mark. Now, we don't have a ton of data around the 500 mark, but this is also using information that the mods have given us about how much better exactly the experts at 300 are than the 150s, which should be about 2.5 times better. In groups, each person rolls this rate. So essentially, it's pretty similar in average to just dividing it by the number of people. So say you had a 1 in 18 in a solo expert mode. Then in a solo trio expert mode, or in a trio expert mode, it would be a 1 in 6. Now this isn't totally true, and it definitely becomes less accurate the higher up you go in the raid level, just due to the way that statistics work. If you're gonna if 3 people are rolling a 1 in 3, that doesn't mean you're always gonna get the drop, but it'll average out. So overall, this is what you're looking at, and it definitely rewards going up the raid levels quite a bit. But once you get that purple, like, what are we looking at? So this is the total unique table, and this is like very rough weightings based on a survey of a couple hundred purples. So it's definitely not 100% correct, but it should be something similar. The ring and the fang look about the same at a 1 in 4. So that means like half the time you're going to get one of these two items, which is pretty accurate to what I've seen. It's at least half the time, you open the chest, you're like, it's going to be a ring or a fang. It's going to be a ring or a fang. And most of the time it is. The ward is next at 1 in 7. And while it's quite cheap, it is a bit rarer than the other ones. Obviously, like, the full price of the item takes into account the sigil, so that's why it's a bit cheaper, but shouldn't have to do too many more raids for the ward versus one of these two items. Masori is about 1 in 10 for each piece, ending up being close to a 3 in 10 for any piece of Masori. This is not a bad chance at all, and it's ultimately like more common to get any random piece of Masori than it is to get, say, a ward. But if you want to get all of the Masori, then you're going to need at least 10 purples most of the time, and probably more considering you're likely to go dry on one of them. And then finally, the staff is about 1 in 24. So definitely the rarest item. It's going to take a long time to get. You're going to want to do a ton of raids for that. And, just hope you get lucky and hope you don't spend a billion hours going dry for it. So what does that mean when we're combining the rates together with your average purple rate? So here's the staff. This is what everyone wants. It's the biggest item, so I thought I'd just lead with that. At level 150, this is your standard raid. It's about 1,226, which is pretty interesting because I'd say it's a little rarer or very similar to about the Twisted Bow in a normal chambers. Maybe a little bit more common, honestly, but not too much more. Level 200, it goes down to 900 raids, 681, 511, and all the way up to a 397 at like a level, or 379 at like a level 350. I didn't really put the higher raid levels on here because I don't think many people are going to be running constant 400s, constant 500s. It's just a bit too crazy to be, that's your way for farming the staff. But obviously, like, it would continue to increase the higher up you go. So obviously, like, this looks definitely worth it to do a 300 over a 150. It's like quite a bit better, and you'll save a ton of time. What about Masori? Let's look at that next. So this is like any random Masori piece, which on average, once you get a specific piece, if you're going for that specific piece, you'll likely get the other two pieces, or at least something similar. On average, it's about 490 raids for level 150, and then for 350 going all the way down to a 1 in 151. So that's not too many raids. If you can do like 350s or even just a standard expert, it's only 200 raids on average to get your Masori. Like, that's pretty good. I think a lot of people should be able to do that, especially if they're at the point of wanting to get this endgame gear for themselves. And definitely worth it to push that raid level up as much as possible. Overall, we've got some images here for the tables. I'll just click through them. This is the 150. This is the 200, the 250, and then the 300 and the 350. So even at the 350, you could see like the easiest the rings are going to get is like a 1 in 63. So you'll still have to do a fair amount of raids for this. And of course, as we talked about, like the overall chance for these going up past under 1 in 20. So it's getting quite nice to see one. And that's, of course, in your name, as we talked about. The pet seems to be about as rare as the staff overall. In the survey that I looked at, it was about the same number of pets and staffs, which is interesting because obviously the staff is only rolled when you get a purple, but the pet is rolled on every kill, but it seems to be quite rare. Assuming it scales with raid level, then we should see the same amount of raids to get it as the staff, which would be about 1,200 in normals, and then closer to 500 in experts. And of course, the higher the better, same as hunting the staff. So definitely one of the rarer pets. 500 experts is quite a lot, and 1,200 normal modes is really a lot compared to some of the other ones in the game. And it definitely matches up more closely to something like the omelet versus the TOB pet, which is a lot more easy to get, some would say. Other things that people are talking about is that solo seems particularly bad. Now, this is obviously like just a bit of bias potentially, considering we've seen high-profile players like Bodhi and Mogul Kirby doing a lot of expert solos and going dry. But it is definitely possible that Jagex maybe changed solo a bit to not be exactly the same scaling. So maybe instead of 1 in 51 for solo normal modes, it's like a 1 in 60. And they specifically made solo a little worse just because they wanted it to be group content. Now, the mods have said that that isn't the case, but we always know that like things can change, information can come out later. Maybe there's a mechanic in the drop table calculation that they weren't aware of that makes solo specifically worse. But that's something that we definitely have to take into consideration. Scaling table weights with raid level, basically what I'm getting at here is like there's a possibility that the weight of the table in terms of which item you're going to get is not always the same. And this has previously been done at something like hard mode TOB, where this Avernic Defender is actually less common in hard mode and the weapons are more common. Now that could happen here, where if you're going for normal mode, it's similar to the distribution that we already looked at, but if you're going into hard mode, maybe the ring and the fang are a little less common. While the data doesn't really seem to support that, obviously it's such a small sample size and we don't necessarily have separated samples for expert and for normal mode, and that's definitely possible and something we could look at later on. Overall, it seems like, these things have gone pretty well, and people seem to like the drop rates more or less. Obviously, solo is a bit hard, but it seems like it's going pretty well in terms of people are getting the items, people are getting their Masori, their fangs, their rings, and hoping to get that staff. And definitely a rare pet still, as, most or if not all of the 50 out of 50 pet hunters have not got the pet yet, and we still don't have someone with all pets in the game many weeks after release. This is just the drop table calculations based on some estimations that were done by one of the clans. I think it was Solitary, but I'm not 100% sure. This has just been passed around in Discord a little bit and adjusted by the update that Jagex made to the drop rate. So this is taking account into the updates made. Now, like as we said, some like this might be a little lower than it looks in this table, and something like this where it's 8-man 300s at 2.25, like that seems a little high. So maybe it's not quite that common. But the middle of the drop rates, you should be seeing something around here. And here's the Reddit survey that was done. So there's about just a little under 300 purples here, and you could see a pretty even distribution of these two, and then the Missouri and the ward, and then 12 staffs and 12 pets. So that's about it. If you have any questions, comments, what do you think of these drop rates? Leave them below. Feel free to let me know if I've missed anything or any information. There have been some other sources, such as the wiki people have some data that they haven't fully released, but they've confirmed that the purple rates seem about the same in terms of the 1 in 51 and then the 1 in 18 to maybe a 1 in 20, depending on deaths. Obviously, deaths will take into account, so that's they could be lower than you might be seeing in these sort of calculations. But until next time, I hope you enjoy these drop rates. I hope you guys get the staff, get lucky on it. I hope it doesn't take you, 1,200 raids, even though that's looking like what it might be to deserve it. But I hope you get lucky. And until next time, peace.